Kick out of that, Linda. Glad you guys are here. Let me turn this on. How are you today? You need this class today? We all need this class today and every day. I don't even know if I hit record over there. I think I just turned it on. Yeah, just about. I don't know if I hit record. Oops. I did. Cool. Yeah, you can turn that off. All right. Trying to stream it on Facebook.
You were on Facebook last time.
Was I? Did it work out?
I mean, when I got
It should be better this time. We're good? All right, you guys ready to get started? Yes. All right, who's excited to be here? All right, very good. See that? So who was at the time management workshop? Raise your hand. All right, good. So as you could tell, it was definitely different than what you typically expect from a time management workshop. It's more of a paradigm shift on how you view the perfect amount of time that God gives you. So that workshop and this one is part of our life management skill series. And it's one thing to know how to live a healthy lifestyle, how to eat better and exercise and be able to get adjusted and understand those principles and remove toxic loads and all that kind of stuff. But if you can't manage your crazy life, what's the difference? The number one reason why people don't exercise is because they don't have enough time, right? And people are so stressed out and they get so worked up in the day. I mean, that's having a greater effect than everything else that we're doing wrong when it comes to approaching our health. So we're going to talk about the stress management aspect of this. And as you guys know, we're part of a global wellness organization called Max Living. And the whole goal of this organization is to have an understanding of the natural order that God has given us, the world that He's called us to live in, to understand all the laws and principles that govern our health and our existence, and then to start to align with those principles. Because every time it's going to be your best way, as I'm going to highlight through this. And so this is part of our Max Mind series. And so it's really important how you think in this world, especially today, now more than ever. And your thoughts determine your actions, and your actions determine your outcomes. So if you really want to get different outcomes and be different than the rest of America, you better be thinking differently than the rest of America thinks. So I'll bring that back into play as well. And this is going to be different than your classic stress management workshop where it's like, okay, the world is going to consume you. And then when you get beat up and kicked around by the world, let's go for a jog or squeeze a ball or get a massage. That's very reactionary in nature. That's not what we're looking to do. Again, this is going to be a paradigm shift in how you look at the world and how you process and perceive it. Does that make sense to you guys? So let's go ahead and get started. And one thing we're going to do is definitely give you some good insight and information. And we're also going to talk about how some of the other laws and principles that govern your health literally affect you in this area as well. We're going to tie it all together. And then the rubber is going to meet the road. We're going to give you some practical application and some tips on how you can take this information and you can really start to mitigate the amount of crazy stress and anxiety, worry, fear, and everything else that we experience in a day, so you don't get consumed by it in the first place. I know someone's coming in. There's going to be a couple of people straggling, and they already talked to us and let us know. I know it says stress management. I know it says that. But at the end of the day, a reactionary system is a failed principle. That's how we approach our health. We break all the laws, all the rules that govern health. And then when you break the rules that govern health, then there are consequences. How are you? There are consequences. And the consequences are that your body ends up in a state of dysfunction. And when your body's in a dysfunctional state, your physiology changes in a dysfunctional state. And dysfunction over time, your body's not expressing an ideal state of perfect health, harmony, or ease. And it doesn't end up in a state of ease, but rather a state of dis-ease, and that's exactly what you get. Right? You guys with me on that? You can never, ever, 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 ever have a disease, a diagnosis for a disease, without being in a dysfunctional state first. Dysfunction over time leads to disease, and diseases kill people. But your body has to be in a dysfunctional state first. And in our healthcare system, what we do is we wait till we become dysfunctional, symptomatic, and sick. We get a diagnosis, and then we enter into what we call a healthcare system. And we say, help me. And you guys all know what happens in America when you put your hand out for some help in our healthcare system. All they do is give you one drug after another. And I will promise you, and I'll go through this as I get through it, you're not programmed to be symptomatic, sick, or disease. That is abnormal. That is not natural. You are programmed to be amazingly healthy. And if you're symptomatic, sick, or have a diagnosis of any kind, that means something's not working right within you. There's a cause to all problems. We have to get to the cause of the problem. So what I'm saying here is that we want to avoid being reactionary, and we want to wake up in a day. And if you were at the time management workshop, we talked about how every day is a gift. And that when you wake up in a day, you look at that day as a gift, and you, instead of trying to make it through the day, we talked about what you get from the day. Right? From each day when you wake up, it's like, can I build better relationships? From this day, can I build better health? From this day, can I improve my spiritual walk? And so by doing those things, you're being proactive, right, on the front end, and you're creating more optimum health, harmony, more order in your life. And when there's more order, there's less chaos, and there's less worry, anxiety, fear, and everything else. But you've got to create that on the front end. Where there's an abundance of light, there is no darkness. When you create an abundance of normal function, health, and healing, there is no sickness and disease. And check this out. When you create an abundance of peace in your life, then there's a lot less worry and stress. Are you guys with me on that? That's what we need to do, is we need to create an abundance of peace. And we do that proactively on the front end. And there's so many things that you could do to make that happen. And we'll go through that and tie it all together as we get going. So you thought your day was stressful, right? And you're like, oh, I need this workshop today. Well, at least all of us, we don't have to worry about being chased down and grabbed from behind with a giant set of fangs and claws and ripped limb from limb and eaten. That's what some people have to worry about every day, or some animals. But, you know, I put that figuratively in here, but you know what? It's not figurative. It is not. This world is trying to rob you of everything that you are intended to be. It's literally grabbing us from behind with these claws, trying to devour us. The Bible says in 1 Peter 5:8, it says, be sober and vigilant. Your opponent, the devil, is like a lion prowling around looking for someone to devour. I mean, the world that we live in, no, it's worse than it's ever been. There's so much nefarious activity out there like I've never seen before. And we've lost our way as a culture. And this world is literally trying to consume us. And so we need to be different. We need to think differently. Because if you look at the minds of Americans, like even before the pandemic happened, does anyone know the statistics of obesity in America? How many people are overweight in America? Even before the pandemic, it was about 2/3, 66%, right? 1/3, now 40% is morbidly obese. What are the statistics on depression in America? Who knows what they are? Before the pandemic. Exactly the same. 2/3 of Americans are depressed. 1/3 of America is so depressed they are told they have to be on mood and mind altering drugs just to make it through their day. And that's a lie. That is not normal and natural. That's not what God has got planned for any of us. And we have to identify what normal and natural is. Who's old enough to remember those commercials where they crack an egg, right? And they said, this is your brain on drugs. Remember that? And they said, the mind's a terrible thing to waste. And if you cracked open the mind of a typical American, you know what you find? A virtual wasteland of depression and despair and isolation and loneliness, confusion and fear and everything else. It is so sad. It is sad because it's not normal or natural. I may mention it later on, but Hippocrates, the father of all healthcare, 500 years before Christ walked the planet, ancient Greek philosopher Hippocrates, he gave us a great vision on what normal and natural is. He basically gave us all the foundational principles of health and healthcare. Even modern medicine, in their infinite wisdom, claimed Hippocrates as their founding father. And there's not one principle that Hippocrates stood for that has anything to do with modern medicine and allopathy. Not one thing. Not one thing. But he gives us a vision. Like people say, oh, well, genetically, my parents were sick, so I'm going to be sick. They had high cholesterol, so I'm going to have high cholesterol. They were depressed, so I'm going to be depressed. They had diabetes, so I'm going to have diabetes. We know that genetics play a very small role in your outcomes. There's something far more significant than your genes that affect who you become in this world and in your future. And that's what?
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics, thank you. How your lifestyle turns on and turns off your genes. So what is really normal for the human body and for the human being, for the human existence? It's not to be sick and broken down and depressed and diseased. That's absolutely not normal. Hippocrates gives us that vision. You know what he says? He says that humans are designed to be healthy as long as you're whole, mind, body, and spirit. He says that we're characterized by self-healing properties that come from within, an innate healing force. And that perfect health and harmony is the normal state of all life. You guys get that, right? So when you really want to know what normal is, compare yourself to that. Don't compare yourself to the rest of America, where 5 out of 6 people die from cancer, heart disease, or diabetes, where 2/3 are overweight, 2/3 are depressed. Don't call that normal. Don't call that normal and lump yourself into that category. You're programmed to be incredibly healthy and vibrantly alive. That's normal, but you have to be whole, mind, body, and spirit. The normal state of the physical body of a human being is one of amazing health and vibrant life. And the normal state of the mind and the spirit is one of peace and harmony. And if you're not in that state, it is an abnormal existence for yourself. And if you let other people tell you that's how it's supposed to be, they're lying to you and you're accepting those lies. And you're letting them label you. And you need to be different than that, because that is not normal and not natural. You should reject it all day long. You were fearfully and wonderfully made in God's image. And He doesn't make junk, just so you know. And if you allow yourself to become part of this world and you get labeled as such, that's on you. You must reject that this instant. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes. So life is stressful. Is this going to click? There you go. So check this out. The human body is an amazing organism. It's perfectly engineered and created. I always talk about like what Hippocrates said, we're programmed to be healthy, but as long as we're whole, mind, body, and spirit, we're physical beings with an eternal soul. If you've ever come to my doctor's report and some other talks that I've done, I'll talk about how we're created. You take the cell from a man, a cell from the woman, you put them together, and those two cells become one. And every human being starts as one cell. And over the period of 40 to 42 weeks, the one cell knows to turn back into 2. Then it turns into 4. Then it turns into 16. Over the period of 9 months, it turns into 74 trillion cells working harmoniously together, creating a viable, functioning human being. There's a master architect that builds the building, and once the building is built, he doesn't hightail it out of there. As long as you are alive, the power that made and created you, your spiritual essence resides inside of you. Hippocrates says the human soul develops until the time you die. And that power is always giving all of its properties to maintain you in existence so you could be on this planet, so you could serve your purpose. There's a life inside of you. And at some point in time, we all die. And when you die, the spirit leaves the body. And when the spirit leaves the body, what happens to the 74 trillion cells, the physical matter of your body? It turns to dust. It means nothing. I'm saying this because you have to recognize there's a spirit within you. There's an intelligence within you that God put inside of you. And that power is infinitely wise, and it knows exactly what to do, and it's giving all of its properties to you every second of every day of your life. And it doesn't make mistakes, and it does everything for a reason. Everything your body does, it does at the right time for the right reason. It knows exactly what to do to adapt you in any environment so you can express in your ideal state. Don't reject that intelligence. Don't lose sight of that intelligence, because man and allopathy tells you that that intelligence doesn't exist, that you were programmed to be weak and insufficient and to break down and become sick and diseased. And the only way that you can make it through a day is that you be on their drugs for the rest of your life. That's what you're being told. That's a lie. You were programmed to be amazingly healthy and vibrantly alive for 80 to 120 years. For 80 to 120 years. Anything less than that is a departure from normal, just so you guys know, right? And I'm saying that because, you know what? Your body knows exactly what it's doing. If, let's say you go on a picnic, right? And it's a beautiful day outside, and you eat your food, and you're with your spouse or your kids or something else, and you get up and you go for a walk after the picnic. And all of a sudden you come across Mama Bear sitting there with her 3 cubs. And she perceives you as a threat. And the bear charges you. And then suddenly, instantaneously, you don't need to think about it. Everything in your body begins to change. You don't have to think about it. It's an immediate reaction. All of a sudden, your nervous system, which adapts you to your environment and perceives everything internally and externally. Messages are rushed into your brain, and instantaneously, your physiology changes completely. Your adrenal glands start producing adrenaline and noradrenaline and epinephrine. Did I say that right? Adrenal. Anyway. So all these hormones start rushing, and then your sympathetic nervous system kicks into full gear, right? And then you get into a fight or flight mode. And when this happens, now all of a sudden your lungs start breathing faster, your heart starts beating faster, stroke volume, your heart's producing and sending out more blood to the tissue cells. Your blood vessels start to constrict. The blood pressure goes up so your body can send more blood to the muscles. The food you just ate, your stomach starts shutting down. Anabolic type of activities where your body's building. It goes more into a catabolic state. Digestion shuts down. Hormones for reproduction and growth and all those other things begin to immediately shut down because your body's gearing up. It knows exactly what to do to make that decision, whether you're going to sit there and fight that bear, right? Or you're going to run and flee from the bear. Your body's physiology needs to change. And that is the exact optimal physiology for that circumstance, right? Amazing things begin to happen, which we're going to talk about. All these things happen right here. Now, that's perfect physiology when you're running from a bear or fighting a bear. But the problem is, we experience this every day, all day long as Americans, except there's no bear. You get all worked up and you're sitting behind a computer or behind the wheel of a car, or you're having an argument with your spouse or your children or something like that. And now your whole physiology changes in this fight or flight mechanism, except you don't exercise that physiology. So remember what I said in the beginning. Dysfunction over time leads to what? Disease. Dysfunction over time leads to disease. If you're sitting behind a desk and looking at a computer and you get all amped up and worked up like this and your sympathetic nervous system kicks in and all of these physiological activities begin to happen within your body, but you don't exercise that physiology, you're in a dysfunctional state for that environment, for those circumstances. And dysfunction over time leads to what? You have to understand how much this is affecting your physiology, putting you in a dysfunctional state, and taking you down a road of sickness and disease. I'm going to highlight some of that stuff for you guys so you could see the science behind some of this stuff and understand, like, physiologically what's happening to your body. So when you perceive this heightened stress environment, a perceived danger, right? And especially if it's over and over and over again, like most of our lifestyles are, then you end up in a chronic state of stress. And the human body was never made to be in that state. Even if you were like, chasing down a saber-toothed tiger or something, 1,000 years ago, it's not like you were chasing tigers and they were chasing you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right? You guys with me on that too? And so it's like, we have to understand we're not designed to be in this chronic stress state, and that's how most of us live all the time. All the time. It is affecting you in ways that you have no idea, and you need to become aware of it. Because, at the end of the day, Hosea 4:6 says, my people perish for a lack of what?
Knowledge.
Yeah, not a lack of information, just so you know. Because you can go on the internet and get information. They'll give you like 27 opinions on the same topic. But really, there's only one truth. Right? You guys with me on that? And you have to understand the natural order and what that one truth is and start to align with it. So stress is real. It has a real physiological effect on the body. And I don't know, we've heard this before, but lots of times I don't think people take it that seriously. But you do need to take it very seriously. So when you're in a stress environment, your digestive system literally begins to shut down. There's an overstimulation of certain glands while an understimulation of others. It affects heart function, change breathing patterns, all these things begin to happen. So the oxygenation of the body begins to become altered. So there's a measurable negative impact on blood pressure, cholesterol, electrolytes, decreased metabolism, increased appetite, increased sugar cravings and blood levels, hormone balance, brain and body chemistry. All these things are affected. All of them. It's like when you're under stress and you produce this cortisol, so it makes perfect sense. So what happens is the cortisol begins to downregulate the gene for HDL production. So I'll go through some of this stuff so you can understand it. Who knows what HDL is? High density lipoprotein. Is it good or bad cholesterol? Well, there's only one cholesterol. We talked about that, right? There's only one cholesterol. You hear people talk about good and bad cholesterol. There's only one cholesterol. There's only cholesterol. There's cholesterol. And then you have proteins that will take cholesterol out to the tissue cells. And then you have other proteins that will bring it back to the liver. Right? You guys get that? But there's only cholesterol. It just hikes a ride with one of those two to or from. You have to understand how the body works. When you do damage to a cell, let's just say that you decide to fight that bear and it pretty much rips you limb from limb, you damage a lot of cells in the body. And let's say you survive it. You know what your body needs to do? Heal and repair. And it's got to repair those cells. It does the healing on a cellular level. Cholesterol is one of the most important ingredients that your body uses to heal and repair cells. Does that make sense to you guys? But you're not in a heal and repair mode when you're looking to fight the bear. That's not the mode you're in. You'll get in that mode if you happen to survive it. But in that moment, what your body starts to do is it shuts down those receptors, right? Or the gene that produces HDL. And HDL is the cholesterol, the lipoprotein that will take the cholesterol back to the liver. And what it also does is it limits the receptors in the blood vessels to take the LDL out of the bloodstream. And that's because it's preparing to do some healing and repairing. It's the perfect physiology for that environment and that circumstance, but you're just stressed out all the time, right? And you're not utilizing that physiology, so you're greatly throwing off your cholesterol levels as a result of this. And it's just because of a perceived threat that you have, the amount of stress that's in your life. I mean, it's literally affecting your physiology and putting you in a dysfunctional state. That dysfunction over time will lead to disease processes. Do you guys see what I'm saying there? It makes perfect sense when you understand what the body's trying to do and how it works. And then blood pressure skyrockets up, right? And people are walking around, they want to artificially lower it. And it's crazy because we don't look at the cause of the problem. There's not one medication that ever existed that affects the cause of a problem. The body is responding to an environment, to a set of circumstances, and it's doing it for a reason. And you have to be really careful when you start artificially undermining what the body's naturally trying to do. Right? Does that make sense? Because of your perceived threat, your blood pressure's off, your cholesterol levels are off. Your body, when it's in that perceived threat, it knows it needs energy, right? So you know what it does? It wants to have sugar in the system so you can have instant energy to go fight. And so now all of a sudden, the cortisol starts increasing your blood sugar levels. And then the receptor sites on the cells, they become desensitized. Your sugar levels start to artificially go up over a period of time. And we have a medication for it, just like everything else. But you have to eliminate the cause of the problem. Hormone balance. I mean, how many people complain about hormone dysregulation? It's unbelievable. But guess what? It's a response. The body's doing this for a reason. You've got to eliminate the cause. You've got to eliminate the cause. Brain and body chemistry, as we'll talk about in just a second. You have to understand that the response to the body in these circumstances is not pathological. That's how we view it. You're walking around with high blood sugar levels, and you're walking around with high blood pressure, and you're walking around with altered body chemistry. You're walking around with all these dysfunctional patterns. The reaction of the body in this regard, this change in physiology, is not pathological. The environment that you are living in, that is what's pathological. Right? You guys with me? That's what's pathological. And even more so, because sometimes you can't change your environment, the way you perceive and respond and react to that environment needs to be fixed. That's what's pathological. And you're in control of that. We'll talk about that in a second. You may not be able to control your circumstances around you or people around you, but you are in direct control on how you respond and perceive those situations and environments. That's in here. And that's in each and every one of you. And that's up to you how you respond and view these things. And we want to change that. That's what really needs to happen. Because you're not going to change this entire world. You're not going to wake up in a day and live in a stress-free world. That's not going to happen, right? But you decide how you respond to it every single time. This chemical chaos is insane, what it does to insulin. You want to stay healthy for a long time and live a long life, slow down the aging process, you have to control insulin levels. When you're in a stressful environment, you are throwing your insulin levels way off and out of whack. Estrogen, testosterone, adrenaline, dopamine, all these growth hormone, these anabolic hormones that build the body and keep you healthy and well, build tissue. Catecholamines, your adrenaline and noradrenaline, serotonin, your feel-good hormone, cortisol, your stress hormone. These things completely go out of whack. Your body's in a complete chemical chaos as a result of your stressful environment. And your body is not programmed to be in that state, especially in a chronic environment. Are you guys with me on that? You have to radically eliminate stress and worry from your life. So check this out. When you get in a stress environment, you're literally depleting from existing stores in your bodies vitamins and minerals, amino acids, proteins, and other important elements. And so I love this line right here. So what you are eating, and people focus on their nutrition, what you're eating, and it's important to do that, but that's not nearly as important as what's eating you. So it's like, you got to put all this together. You could be focusing on your nutrition and doing some wonderful, amazing things, and you're letting stress consume you and just undermine all of your efforts. That's what you're doing. So you got to put it together and see how it works. So when you start depleting nutrients in your body, then that has a direct impact on your immune response. And that's really important to understand as well. And so there's like some outward side effects when it comes to your immune system. And you start seeing when people are under stress, that's when they end up with like flu-like symptoms or cold sores or skin issues, pain, illness. I mean, all those things. Stress always attacks an area of weakness, just so you know. Right? Does that make sense to you guys too? It attacks an area of weakness. But it certainly can suppress the immune system. And then you have more significant effects that can lead to less obvious but more severe developments of serious diseases like cancer and autoimmune diseases. So when your immune system becomes compromised, think about it like this. Every single day, every human being on the planet Earth is going to develop somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 potentially cancerous cells. Everybody. Did you know that you develop every day somewhere in the range of 2,000 to 10,000 potentially cancerous cells? Everybody, every day. Somebody tell me why everyone doesn't end up with cancer. If you're developing those cancer cells every day, why doesn't everyone end up with a diagnosis? Because luckily, in His infinite wisdom, when God created you, He put an immune system inside of your body. And one of its primary objectives is to identify and destroy those potentially dangerous cells. But listen, epigenetics, like you talked about, would you rather be the person who wakes up tomorrow and develops 2,000 potentially cancerous cells or 10,000 potentially cancerous cells every day? Where would you like to be in the range? The lower end, right? You guys with me? Well, I'll tell you what. If you're eating like the rest of America at McDonald's and processed food, and you're not exercising, and you're living in a toxic environment with all these chemical exposures, and you're under stress all the time, guess what you're doing? You're putting yourself over on this end of the spectrum, and you're decreasing your odds. And then you're undermining the very system that is intended to identify and destroy any of those potentially cancerous cells. Right? You guys with me on that too? So when you allow stress to take its effect on you and you weaken your immune system, now you could clearly see how you're leaving yourself open to become another statistic. And when you walk through this front door, my objective for all of you guys, and you know this about me, it's like way more than a business, this is a calling. My job is to keep you guys, you're paying me to keep you guys from becoming another statistic. There's no guarantees, only God knows the outcome, but you want to give yourself the best chance. Understand His laws and principles and start aligning with them. And you give yourself the best chance. But you have to understand how the body works. And He makes it just perfectly. And we're being fooled and lied to in so many different regards in this culture. That's what I'm talking about. It's like we have to find our way to the truth, but we're being misled because there are some fundamental premises and principles that we ignore. We have to understand that there's a reality and a truth out there. And drugs and surgeries are not the answers. And don't get me wrong. If you cut off your leg, you don't want to be in some third world country. You want to be in America for that. So we excel at emergency crisis care, right? But you can't use that system for health care because that's not what it's for. Health never comes from the outside in. Drugs don't fix these pathological, dysfunctional patterns that we're creating in our lifestyle habits. Drugs never fix those patterns, right? It's only returning back to the normal laws and principles and restoring physiology, addressing the cause of the problem. That's how you fix the problem. You replace the dysfunction with normal function, health, and healing, and you simply remove the interference, uncover the layers, stop the pollution, and start to exist in a way that you were intended to exist according to that natural order. So the external effects, I mean, people prematurely age. You see wrinkling of the skin, you see discoloration of the skin, changes in nails and hairs, and all these other signs of aging. The appearance of a stressed out individual is pretty darn obvious too. You could see it in their facial expressions. You have a hunch. When you're stressed out, your body takes a certain posture, which makes sense because if you're going to fight, you want to protect your organs. You're going to fight a bear, you have to take this posture right here. And you stay closed off. And I'll have you know, when you have this kind of posture, your shoulders roll forward, your head moves forward. It's the very classic pattern that we see in this office every day. And what you need to know, you're only as healthy as your spine and nervous system. There are so many studies that show a hyperkyphosis in this posture just like this and early mortality. It's not one study, there's literally tons of them that show that exact correlation. So you have to fight for every degree, a millimeter of good posture and improvement in your spine that you can get. Because when your spine breaks down, it literally begins to compromise the nervous system and how the body's functioning and healing, which we'll talk about in just a minute, right? And so, but then you also have to understand how things get tight. I mean, so there, we talk about the 3 T's of why your spine breaks down in the first place. And one of the T's is thoughts. Is thought. People don't realize you come in here to get your spines taken care of. Well, if we want to get the best results, you better be addressing the 3 T's, the reason why your spine goes out of alignment in the first place. The second T is thought, how you think. There are parts in your brain through tracts in your spinal cord that directly control postural muscles. There are postures associated with every mood and emotion. Look at someone who's depressed all the time. What's their posture look like? That's not a coincidence. And we talked about stress and worry and all these things. And if you're stressed out all the time, so maybe 5 minutes one day, no big deal. But if you're stressed out every day, all day long, it's literally going to manifest in the physical structure of your spine. And then you're only as healthy as your spine and nervous system. You guys with me? And if you guys are looking to get the best outcomes of your care in this office, then you've got to take care of this. You have to take care of your mind. You can't get consumed by this world. I mean, it's just pure science. We know these things. I mean, it has a significant impact in your physical appearance, particularly weight. So when you're in a stressed environment, again, sometimes you need to consume some kind of food that gives you quick energy or food that gives you high energy. So those foods would be like carbohydrates and fats, because carbohydrates, they're foods that can be processed very easily in the body, more readily accessible as an energy source. And fats, they pack a lot of calories or energy per gram. So now, when you're in these stress environments, your body starts craving these high energy type of foods, right? And that's fine if you're eating good, clean versions of those foods, and then you exercise that physiology and you burn them off. But if you don't, any of those calories that you consume that you don't burn off, they get stored in the body. And they get stored as what? They get stored as fat. Now here's the problem. You live in America. So when you start craving carbs and fats, you're eating processed carbs and you're eating trans fats and hydrogenated oils. And those things are literally undermining your health. They're just adding to the insult. It's insult to injury. The number one reason why we're inflamed and fat and sick as Americans is because of the overconsumption of poor quality carbs. And then all the fat you get, and you know what? One of the biggest missing nutrients and deficiencies in the standard American diet is good, clean, healthy fat, because all you're getting is all this processed fat. And that also adds to the inflammation. And you know what those fats do? Did you know that every one of those 74 trillion cells of your body, it's got an outer fat layer to it, a lipid bilayer? And it's very important that you get good, clean, healthy fats to make up those cells. And if you don't put good, clean, healthy fat in your body's going to use the fat that you do put inside, the hydrogenated oils. So your cells are literally going to be made up of that unhealthy fat. And that outer bilipid bilayer, that lipid bilayer is going to be made up of bad fats and become very stiff and rigid. And you're not going to allow good nutrients into the cell, and you're not going to allow waste products to get out of the cell. And that cell is going to become very unhealthy, and it can mutate and transform. And then it starts to take a cancerous type of appearance. And that's what you end up with. This is how this stuff happens. So you have to look at health on a cellular level, right? So it's like you could see how this all creates this crazy domino effect, and everything just starts going array right from the beginning. Does that make sense to you guys? And then most of the time when you're stressed, you're going to start to store the fat centripetally around the glutes and around the hips and around the waist. This is where you keep it. And then there's a very specific effect on mental health when you are stressed out all the time. Because what happens is, like, your adrenals kick in and you have noradrenaline that starts to fire up. And then when you have noradrenaline fire up, it kind of creates a state of anxiety, which is what you want when you're fighting a bear. You want to be anxious. You want to be on high alert, right? Does that make sense? And what normally happens when you get a little worked up in a normal environment, let's say that you live a healthy lifestyle and you exercise, get a little bit worked up, you exercise, right? And your body would normally produce serotonin to counteract that adrenaline. But when you're stressed out all the time, the serotonin can't keep up. And you have too much noradrenaline pumping through your system, the serotonin can't keep up, and you end up incredibly anxious all of the time and worried and in that state. And you never get that feel-good hormone really elevated like it should. And then you start seeing things like anxiety, panic attacks, personality disorders. And then too, if you think about it too, when you're in that stressed out environment, this is not the time to try to like solve the world's problems and like maybe figure out the Krebs cycle or something like that, right? So your higher level of thinking and focus and concentration, those parts of the brain get shut down. And then the parts of the brain that are more associated with mood and emotion memory and things like that, they start to fire up and you become very emotional in nature. Because your body needs to remember when you went to the watering hole, there was a tiger there. So the next time you have that flood of emotion and you start developing these patterns, right? Does that make sense to you too? But you lose the focus and concentration when you're stressed out all the time. It makes perfect sense the way the brain actually works in this environment. And that's why, you know, when you're stressed out and filled with worry and anxiety, that's why people make mistakes all the time. That's why they get hurt all the time. Those kind of things happen. I mean, it's hard to focus when you're a student in a school, when you're worked up and all the time, you're stressed out. And then we just put a label on those kids. ADHD. I mean, there's many more factors that are associated with it, but you could see how these patterns begin to happen. So, I mean, there's a direct effect in many ways on your health. And when we end up in a depressed state, which is 2/3 of Americans, it's sad. It's really sad. And I want to start getting into some different ways to view and change the way you respond to some of these things. And I want to start with this one. The great lie of depression. Anyone know what that is? Who knows what the great lie of depression is?
There's no way out.
That's a lie. Yep, it's not the great lie, because your way out is part of the lie where it exists. And what's the lie? That you're alone. That's the lie. That's the lie. Because you're never alone. Because God is always by your side. Every single step of the journey, you're never alone. And we lose sight of that. God is always with you. And he fills us up and he loves us and he's got everything there for us, everything that we ever needed. And we reject that presence and that essence. And we don't let him fill us up. And then we become empty. And we look to other areas for our happiness. And that's a lie. And part of that lie is this right here. That somehow, I mean, think about it. Do you think that 2/3 of Americans are depressed because God forgot to put enough Prozac in your system? If it wasn't the cause, it can't be the solution. And it's become the solution for all of us as a culture. And it's not the way it's supposed to be. And you have to understand the tremendous effects that these chemicals have on the body and on the brain. And they're very addictive. But it's not the way it's supposed to be. I know there's a better way. And we see this in our office all the time because we have lots of people. If 2/3 of Americans are depressed, what do you think happens when people come into our office and we look at their charts? 2/3 of them have depression on their chart. At least 1/3 are on mood and mind-altering drugs and they're looking for a way out and we have to help them. And we've got solutions. And we've helped so many people get off these medications and find a different way. But like Albert Einstein said, I mean, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again expecting different results. That's insanity. And that's what we do as a culture. Oh my God. We make up 5% of the world's population. So if you guys haven't heard this, you need to know this. We make up 5% of the world's population. Of all the pharmaceuticals that exist on the planet Earth, of all the drugs that exist here on Earth, how much of all the pharmaceuticals are consumed by Americans? 5% of the population. What's the number?
25%.
60.
75 to 80% of all of the pharmaceuticals are consumed by 5% of the population, America. If drugs equaled health, we would be the healthiest culture that's ever existed in the history of mankind. But we're the sickest. There's never been a sicker culture than America in 2023. There's more cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, neurological conditions, autoimmune conditions, you name it, it's worse in America than anywhere else. If drugs were the answer, we'd be the healthiest. My Bible tells me that a tree is known by its fruit. And the fruit of our efforts is the sickest culture that's ever existed. We're also the culture that's the most removed from the natural order that God has created for us. And as a result, these are the consequences. We are paying the price. We are paying the price. We need something different. We don't need more drugs. That's the last thing that we need. Just look at the bottom line. And I'm telling you guys right now, if the rest of the culture is going to continue to be fooled and buy into this and be brainwashed, don't let it be you. I'm telling you right now, listen, I say this in my doctor's report. There are cultures right now, 2023, around this world that we can go visit right this second where you're going to find the healthiest, longest lived people. People that consistently live beyond the age of 100 years of age. More centenarians than anywhere else on the planet. And when you go to these cultures, there's no appreciable amount of cancer, heart disease, diabetes doesn't even exist. Depression and crime don't virtually exist in these cultures. Believe that, because it exists right now. We send scientists and researchers and doctors to go study these cultures to find their secrets, as if we're going to find a magic berry that grows on a magic tree on a magic island. And when our researchers come back, what they report is that there is no magic berry. There's no magic pill. There's nothing like that. There's no quick fix. All they discover is that these people simply live according to the natural order and the laws and principles that God gave us to be healthy. They live in accordance to that. And to the extent that you align with these principles is to the extent that you could benefit from them. But to the extent that you break those rules is to the extent that you pay the price. What I'm telling you, each one of you guys, you need to be different than everybody else out there in America. You have to be different than your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, your coworkers. And they're going to criticize you. They'll make fun of you because you're different. But you want to be different, trust me. You don't want to be like everybody else. When 330 million people believe in a bad idea, it's still called a what? A bad idea. Henry David Thoreau said, when you find yourself on the side of majority, it's time to pause and reflect. You want to be different than everybody else. Find a different way, right? So when you walk into this office, the things we say, the processes and protocols that we implement, everything that we represent has to be different than what everyone else does. You're going to get what everyone else gets. And I'm promising you it's going to be different in here. So the first thing you have to do in changing your world around you, and by the way, do not conform to the ways of this world, but be transformed by a renewal of the mind. Don't conform to the ways of this world. Be transformed by a renewing of the mind so you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and holy and pleasing. The first thing you need to do is go home and look in the mirror and look at yourself and be real to yourself. Know what labels you've placed on yourself. Know what labels you've allowed other people to place on you. And know how you really view and look at things. And you have to look at yourself and take responsibility. Stop blaming everybody else. You know where your insufficiencies are. You know where your weaknesses are. Don't blame other people. Take on the responsibility and start to make efforts to fix those things and become more wholesome in who you're intended to be. And what I've learned a long time ago is that you really want to have to make change. If you want to be better, if you want to improve your outcome, you have to want it. And if you want something bad enough, you're going to find a way. And if not, you find another excuse. What do I say? You can lead a horse to water, you can't make it what? Thirsty. You can't make it thirsty. Thank you, somebody said it. You have to be thirsty. If you're thirsty enough, you're going to drink the water. Right? You guys with me on that too? And so, once you believe change can happen, then amazing things begin to occur in your life. And this is what you need to do, is change the prescription of your lenses that you view the world. Take the old way that you were looking at the world and everything else in it, and you take those glasses off, especially if they're consistent with a secular world, and you throw them on the ground and you step on them and you get a new prescription, and you start looking at the world a lot differently. Change your prescription. Change your perception. And perception is everything. So now, when I say that, it's like, I said it a little bit earlier, sometimes you can't control the people around you in your life, but you are in direct control of the way you respond and perceive those situations. And that's where we need to really begin to focus on creating a new way of thinking. And your body can change, and it will change. They used to say that you couldn't change the brain, and once it gets hardwired, that's it. But now we know through science, neuroplasticity, it changes all the time. But you've got to put it in the right state. That's another Max Mind talk that we do, where we talk about how to really create and hardwire the brain into a new way of thinking, create new thought patterns and overcome labels and all these other things. So look for that one when we do it as well. They all go hand in hand. But based on how you think, many of your outcomes in life is going to be based on how you respond to different situations and circumstances. So start to become someone of success and doing the right thing and doing it all the time. You just have to take out the old software and plug in a new software. That's what you need to do. And in this new software, you have to start moving towards God. That's what you need to start doing. And it's amazing because when you start moving towards God, amazing things start to happen. And what you need to do is start taking little tiny baby steps towards God, and he'll take giant God steps towards you. So it's Jeremiah 29:11. It's like my favorite scripture. So it says, who knows what that scripture is? What's that? Do you want to say it?
I know the plans I have for you, plans to, I know the plans I have for you, said the Lord. Plans to something and not to harm you.
And right.
Plans to give you hope in the future.
All right, so here's how it goes. It says, Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know well the plans I have in mind for you, says the Lord." And there's different versions of the Bible, obviously. Plans for your welfare, not your woe. Plans for a future full of hope. A future full of hope. And just like I said with Hippocrates, 500 years, the normal state of the body is one of peace and happiness. That's what God's got planned for us. Plans for our welfare, not our woe. Plans for a future full of hope. But that's where a lot of us stop. We don't read on past that. We say, oh God, I'm here. I've showed up. It's like, so you promised me this future of hope. Right? It's like, so can you just give it to me? It's like we're entitled to it. But you got to go on and read, because then it says, but in Jeremiah 29:12-13, it says, when you call me, when you come to pray to me, you will find me with you. Or I will listen to you. When you look for me, you will find me. And yes, when you seek me with all of your heart, you will find me with you, says the Lord. You know what that means? Yeah, he's got big plans and promises for us, but we have to do our part. We have to start moving towards God. And like I said, when you take those little tiny man steps towards God, he takes these giant God steps towards you. And at the end, he says, he says, I will change your lot. I will change your circumstances. I will change your outcomes, because he could do anything. But you have to take your steps and your actions. You have to do your part in the equation. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. And as we'll see as we go through this, you just start putting this stuff together. And so we've got these 9 principles that you want to apply on a regular basis. And luckily, when we were put on the planet, we were given an owner's manual. And I suggest you read it, because it's got all the answers in there. Everything you ever need to know. It's right in your Bible. And again, remember what Hippocrates said. Perfect health and harmony is the normal state of all life. The normal state of the spirit is one of peace and happiness. So let's go through these 9 principles. Be your authentic self. So there's no peace in a life wishing you were someone that you're not. So don't try to be someone else. I love this quote by Oscar Wilde. Be yourself, everyone else is taken. I mean, be your authentic self. God makes us all individually perfect. He makes you exactly who you're intended to be. Just be that person. And don't let the world stifle you. He gives us all gifts and talents. And we all have a different purpose on the planet, or you wouldn't be here. But I do know it's hard to serve your purpose if you're sick, suffering, or dead. So you have to take care of your physical being. Right? Does that make sense to you? So go for it. Be your authentic self in life. Set your moral compass. So the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. You'll never go wrong doing the right thing. And so what we need is to have integrity in everything that we do. Have character in everything you do. Conviction in everything you do. And be principled in everything that you do. And you'll have nothing to worry about. And if this is guiding, you have this moral compass. If this is guiding you, then you're going to always end up on the right side of the equation. And what we should all be striving for is to hear those words at the end of your life. Well done, good and faithful servant. Because you're going to be judged on every day that you're on this planet. And every day and all the actions, you're going to be held accountable for it. If you're at the time management workshop, we talked a lot about this. And we talked about having your North Star, right? And that's a fear of the Lord. That's where it all begins. And that's where we've gone sideways in this culture. It's because we've taken the spiritual component out of everything. We've taken the spiritual component out of the businesses. We've taken the spiritual component out of the government. We've taken the spiritual component out of healthcare, right? We try to strip that side away, and we say man's got a much better way. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, I'm going to say the quote again. Say it every single time I talk. Sorry, but here it comes again. Brilliant. The man was brilliant. And before he was a civil rights activist, he was a man of the cloth. So everything he looked at was through a lens of faith-based and spiritually oriented. And he said this. He said, if an earthly institution or custom conflicts with God's will, it is your Christian duty to oppose it. And you must never allow the transitory, evanescent demands of a man-made institution to take precedence over the eternal demands of the Almighty God. And what he's saying, with all things, there's man's way and there's God's way. And man's way is eternal and everlasting, and it changes with the blowing of the wind or the times or whoever's in office. But God's way is eternal and everlasting. It's what was and is and always will be. It's never going to be anything different. And he's saying that we have a responsibility to understand this world in the order that he's created it. And you have to understand this natural order, and you must align with it. Don't expect God's natural order to align with you and change and conform to you. You conform to it. There's not even like a choice. A law is a law because it applies to all of us all the time, every time. You're not special. You comply to these laws. The law of gravity. He who steps off a tall building goes splat. Whether you think you're special or it doesn't apply to you or you didn't know about it, doesn't matter. When you jump off a tall building, you're going to hit the ground really hard. And there are lots of laws and principles that God has given us that govern our existence, and you must align with them. I don't care what Fauci tells you or anyone else in this culture. At the end of the day, there's God's way, and that's it. If you choose man's way, then I feel really bad for you. Good luck. Find your way. Have that North Star. A fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. A fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. You will find your way. That's what Martin Luther King is saying. Understand that natural order. You will find your way. You will see things for what they are. And then you'll make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you will end up with better outcomes. And your whole future, God will change your lot. He will change your circumstances. He'll change everything. So get rid of your limitations. Lift your limitations and face your fears. In the game of life, it's better to be 1 for 20 than 0 for 0. Get up the bat. Swing the bat. Go for it. The world just like fills us with fear, and that's not who we're intended to be. Jeremiah, was it 2 Timothy 1:7? Yeah, 2 Timothy 1:7. For God did not give you a spirit of timidity, but rather a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. The Bible tells you that if you're lukewarm, you're going to get spit out. Be bold and confident and go for life. God put you on the planet. He's got plans for you. We're supposed to be superheroes in this world, right? It's like a Marianne Williamson quote. You know, it's you know that quote where it says, "Your greatest fear is not that you're inadequate." You know that quote? Well, anyway, if you go on into it, it says that we are all made to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in all of us. How beautiful are those words? We are born to make manifest the glory of God that's within us. He's got a purpose for us. Our job is to go out there and make manifest of that. And we're glorifying God. Just know that the problems ahead of you are never as great as the power that is behind you. You know, I read this one great book. I love it. The 3 Success Secrets of Shamgar. 3 Success Secrets of Shamgar by Christian author Pat Williams. He was the president CEO of the Orlando Magic, and before that he was president CEO of the Philadelphia 76ers. And this book was awesome. It was like revolutionizing for me, especially when you get to a point in life where you think you're facing the seemingly impossible. And you're just kicked down and beat up and it doesn't seem like there's a way out, but there always is. And all you got to do is listen to the 3 Success Secrets of Shamgar. Does anyone know who Shamgar is in the Bible, by the way? It's Judges 3:31, I believe. Shamgar, he gets one line in the Bible. And it says, Shamgar killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad and saved the nation of Israel. I didn't know what an ox goad was. I looked it up. It's a big stick. So what this is saying is that this one guy killed 600 people with a stick and saved this whole nation. And all he gets is one line in the Bible. So Pat Williams, he wrote a book on he speculated, how was this even possible? And he put a lot of thought into it. He's a Christian author and came back and he said, there had to have been 3 specific elements at play for him to be able to achieve this extraordinary task. And they're very simple. He said the first thing is, no matter what you're facing, start where you're at. Pretty simple, right? Because he couldn't start at the 500th Philistine. He had to start at the first one. And then he had to kill the second one. And then the third. And the second principle is, use what you got. He didn't have a machine gun. He had a stick. And then the last principle is do what you can. That's it. You can't do more than your best. Just do exactly what you can. And it's a beautiful message no matter what you're facing. Because with God behind you, you could do anything. Nothing is impossible. Right? You guys with me on that? And with God, the seemingly impossible becomes possible. And he works through people to achieve extraordinary things all of the time. You hear the old adage, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, right? Have you heard that? Have you heard Mother Teresa's quote about that? She says, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. I just wish you didn't trust me so much. I was having a talk with a patient who was a pastor, and we were talking about that same thing one day, and he enlightened me. It was beautiful. He says, well, I don't really believe that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. He said, I don't believe God gives you something you can't handle. He doesn't give you anything you can't handle without him. He gives you plenty that you can't handle without him. But with him, all things are possible. And that's where we have to stop taking on the heat. We're literally getting out in front of God, and we're taking all the heat, especially in this world. So just get behind God and let him take the heat. He can take it all on for us. But we want to shoulder the burden. And good luck carrying the burden of this world on a daily basis, every day, day in and day out. Stop taking it all on. We were never meant to. All we have to do is turn it over. And the load becomes very light. And it's easier to make it through a day. Make sense? Manage your time. Man, what a gift. 86,400 seconds, right? Every day's a gift. You get deposited 86,400 seconds into an account every day. And whatever time you don't use, it disappears forever and you can never get it back. And what are you going to do with this amazing, precious day? And like I say in the time management workshop, Your life, you're creating a picture. Is your life going to be a masterpiece? And every day is a stroke of the brush. Every time you wake up, it's a gift given to you by God. And at the end, hopefully that picture will be a masterpiece that you present to God. And you hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Every day is an opportunity to live life to the fullest. Every day is an opportunity to advance in learning. Every day is an opportunity to become better, to serve humanity, right? And when in the time management workshop, I talked about the 86,400. And we say, what if someone gave you a bank account where they gave you $86,400 to spend in a day? And whatever you didn't spend, it would disappear out of your bank account, never to be seen again. And I asked people, what would you buy? Right? And you hear, oh, fancy cars and nice houses and bigger barns and all these other things. And at the end of the day, you get judged on how you spend that money, how you spend that time. My question was to everybody, it's like, how are you going to spend it? Are you going to spend it serving humanity, serving God, the greatest commandment, to love and serve God and love and serve each other, right? Or are you just going to be selfish? And so we have to think about that, because you're going to be judged on how you spend that time. Please, God, never say there's not enough time in a day. What God makes, He makes perfect. He gives us 24 hours in a day, 86,400 seconds. And He puts you on the planet for the exact amount of time to fulfill the calling that He's got planned for you. And people say, I don't have enough time, right? And I use that quote, you have exactly the same amount of time in a day that Mother Teresa had, or Martin Luther King, or Michelangelo, or Gandhi. Gave a whole bunch of names in that quote. You have the same amount of time in a day. It's what you do with that time that's going to define who you are. But God gives you the perfect amount of time to do what you're put on the planet to do. To stop wasting the time and use it to be effective and do what you're called to do. Does that make sense to you guys? Good. Be thankful and want less. And so, stop focusing on the things that you don't have or that other people have, and focus on the things that you do have and the gifts that you have been given. And be thankful for that. Have an attitude of gratitude, and it makes a huge difference. There's no life, no happiness in a life wishing you were something you're not, or having things that you don't have. So be humble, big God, little me. Matthew 23:12, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Anyone who's excessively prideful in the history of mankind falls. There's a fall to grace every time they get humbled, put right to their knees. So again, just greatest commandment, love and serve God and love and serve one another. Help other people. Makes a huge difference, which I'll talk about in a second. Love more and hate less. It's amazing how, and I'm guilty of it too, but we focus on a lot of negative emotions and feelings, especially when we feel we've been wronged in life. And you can't expect to be imperfect in life and then go meet your Maker and have God forgive you when you're not willing to forgive other people. So just like God is going to forgive us, we need to extend that same kind of grace to other people. And honestly, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Some people don't even know that you're upset with them and you're hanging on to these negative emotions, and it's only destroying your health. They don't even know the difference, or they're not even affected by it. So you have to let go of some of these things, right? Just let it go. It's not worth it. Let go and just prosper and be happy in a day. And again, just love. It's the greatest of all of those emotions. The power of faith. These next two take us into the future. It's not what you know, but who you know. So let God take over everything. Faith is the opposite of worry. Worry is the opposite of faith. So God's got a plan for you. He's going to take care of you. And stop worrying about everything in this world. So just get behind your faith. And we've become a culture that's become faithless. We've become God's. I say it all the time. It's like we went from being one nation under God. And then we became one nation without a God. And now we become one nation where we become our own God. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. That is not the natural order. Good luck with that. Cats are dogs, dogs are cats. I mean, I can't even make sense out of anything in this world anymore. We're trying to recreate this natural order to fit how we think things should be. It's insane. It's insane. It's never going to work out. So, find your North Star. There's one God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. He created you out of 2 cells. I mean, relish in that. Soak up that. Understand that. Use that as your guidance to everything that you do, just like Martin Luther King was saying. Have faith in that. And then that gives you hope and takes you into the future. There's nothing worse for a human being who's lost hope than you don't have a tomorrow. There's no purpose in living another day. But Jeremiah 29:11, for I know well the plans I have in mind for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare, not your woe, plans for a future full of hope. A future full of hope. That's what God's got planned for us. And when we lose hope, we're just lying to ourselves, or we're letting those labels place a value on us that they don't need to. And you accept it. You have to reject those things. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, a couple other tips I'm going to give you guys. And this is some real important stuff right here. On a regular basis, you have to recharge your battery. We're these physical beings with this eternal soul. We have this energy that exists within us in life. And when you go out into this world, every day it drains your battery. The world could be exhausting. People could be exhausting sometimes, right? I mean, like you talked about, I need this workshop today because the world just sucks the life out of you sometimes. The ways of the world. And so what you need to do is go back to the essence of who you are as a physical being with an eternal soul. There's a spirit that animates your body into life that started you from 2 cells. It gives you life every day. At some point in time, everybody dies. And when you die, the spirit leaves the body. And void of the spirit, the body literally turns to dust. There's something that animates you into life every second of your life. That's the power. That's the essence. And the world drains that from you. So every day, luckily God made us to be a rechargeable battery. Just go plug back in. You just got to go plug back in, and the battery charges back up. The spirit fills you back up. You become more vibrantly alive, as we'll talk about. So pray. Read spiritual material. Contemplate and think and meditate over those things. And then go serve your purpose. It's like, so if I get, just so you guys know, if someone comes in my office and they say that they want to get off their antidepressants, right? They're depressed, they want to change their state. The first thing I always tell people to do is to go help other people. Find a way, go serve in some capacity. Go help other people. It's the greatest commandment to love and serve God and love and serve one another. How could you feel bad about yourself when you're helping other people? It fills you up. You're helping someone else, but you get filled up. Are you guys with me on that? It's amazing when you start praying and reading spiritual material. And we call this a spiritual triathlon. We recommend you do it every morning. Give God your first fruits. And you're going to get charged up for the day. And you're going to have perfect order for the day. It's crazy. When I'm on point reading my Bible, it's like bizarre. It's like whatever I read that day, that message comes into play on that day. It's like it was meant for me to read that on that day. It's incredible. It's like a lot of stuff that, programs that we teach and come up with, a lot of this stuff I came up with on Monday evening. And in our church, we have a program called Perpetual Adoration. 24 hours a day, someone's always at the church praying, an hour at a time, and then a new person comes every hour. But 24 hours a day, someone's always there. And I would do it every Monday night from 11 to 12. My longest day at work, I wanted to go there late at night because I was making sacrifice. And I would pray and read my Bible, and then I would just listen. And it's amazing the stuff that just filled me up, and it was like incredible. And that's how I came up with a lot of stuff that, you know, we teach in here, and a perspective that we get. Because, you know, the world is like a rock concert, and God whispers to us. And we need to be in a state of peace and just be quiet and tranquil and listen. And he whispers softly to us, but everything we need to hear is right there for us. But we're just too busy in the rock concert all the time. And then I want you guys to understand this. This is science. As a physical being, and all matter on the planet's got a vibratory frequency to it. And the more alive you are, the higher the frequency, right? And so when you go back here and you look and it says, serve your purpose or your mission, you're never more alive than when you're doing exactly what God has called you to do. When you're in that element of doing what he's called you to do, carrying the cross of your calling, whether it be, you know, if you're a parent, God gifted you with a child. So that may be part of your purpose on the planet. When you're with that child and you're really connected, uninhibited, without any distractions, I mean, you're completely filled up. Your vibratory frequency goes through the roof, right? Are you guys with me? And so it's like when especially if you see me on a stage or something, a lot of people out there, I mean, I'm uninhibited, and my vibratory frequency is through the roof because I'm doing what God called me to do, right? And this is why, partly why, you know, I've been coming in here for 27 years, and during flu season or during COVID, I'm adjusting sick people all the time, and I never get sick. I mean, yeah, I do these other things that take care of my health, but when you're vibrantly alive, that's what we want for every person when they come in here. Is that we start adjusting you, we turn on that vibratory frequency. You become more vibrantly alive. More vibrantly alive. Your frequency's so high. You don't get sick when you're in that state. They say that Jesus's vibratory frequency was so high that he can heal people just by walking into a room. You touch his cloak and you get healed because his frequency was so high. So when you're depressed and anxious and worried, your vibratory frequency is very low. So you got to do things that jack it up on a regular basis. Does that make sense to you guys? And all these things I'm talking about is what you do. Now, this is something, it's critically important. I didn't talk about it earlier, but when you guys get into a fight or flight type of state, there's a natural reset to the tone of the nervous system, and it resets your whole physiology. You know what some of the most important things you could do to reset that is activating motion, exercise, moving. And when you fight a bear, essentially that's what you're doing. Innately, inherently, of the circumstance, you've got the solution to the problem there. How do you get back to a state of normal? Well, you have to exercise the physiology. And this is what's beautiful about somebody who exercises on a regular basis. This is why you can manage stress a lot more effectively. It's also why someone who's depressed and stressed out all the time, I tell them another thing to do is go start exercising on a regular basis. There's literally a reset to the mechanoreceptors that stimulate the part of the brain that resets the whole entire autonomic nervous system, and that would be your parasympathetics and sympathetics. You know where another reset occurs? In the mechanoreceptors in the joints of the spine. It's pretty amazing. The neurology behind this is unbelievable. So you guys have to understand when you get adjusted, I always talk about it to you guys. I said there's a reset to the tone of the nervous system every time you get adjusted. You're resetting those mechanoreceptors, stimulating the part of the brain that then begins to create a state of balance in your autonomic nervous system. Do you guys understand that? And we talk about this in a totally different workshop, and we talk about it a lot, that your nervous system is adapting you to your environment. And there's two divisions of the nervous system. You have the turquoise part of the nervous system you see going to all the different organs, and then you have the purple part. And one division, the parasympathetics, only comes out of the top part of your neck and the lower part of your spine and goes to all the organs. And then the sympathetics, the fight or flight division, comes out of the middle of the spine from here to here. And one division, the sympathetics, speed all the body functions up, right, that we talked about. Heart rate, respiration, right, all those things, fight or flight. And then the other division slows everything back down to a state of rest and balance. And it's through these two divisions of the nervous system that your body can regulate and harmonize and adapt to your environment and express in this ideal state of perfect health, normal function, vibrant life, health, and ease. Does that make sense to you guys? Every time you get adjusted, there's literally a reset to the tone of the autonomic nervous system, and it puts your body in a state of balance. And it takes you out of that fight and flight mechanism. It's pretty amazing. You guys don't know that's what's happening when you get adjusted, but when you're worked up in a day, and you come in and get adjusted, there's a reset to the tone. And you walk out of here functioning more normally. Now think about it like this too. There's an opposite side of that equation. If you're walking around subluxated, right, and you're altering those mechanoreceptors in the joint, then you're throwing your parasympathetics and your sympathetics out of balance. And just walking around naturally, just because the tone of the nervous system is out of balance, your body's in a dysfunctional state. And the dysfunction over time leads to disease. It's all simple neurology. We know you can't move even a single vertebrae, even a degree or millimeter out of alignment without affecting the nervous system. It is killing me not to go 100 layers deep into the neurology right now. We'll save that for another time now. But check this out, because I want to get to this more important part about the nervous system. Hippocrates said that as humans we're designed to be healthy as long as we're whole mind, body, and spirit. Mind, body, and spirit. There's one system of the body that connects all three of those, mind, body, and spirit. What is that? The nervous system. The nervous system. It's like the interwoven, it's like your mind, your body, and the spirit, while you're on this planet Earth, can't be separated. You guys get that? While you're on the planet, they can't be separated. It's an interwoven fabric, and the nervous system is the thread of that fabric, holding it all together. I didn't choose the nervous system to govern and control all function, health, and healing in the body. That's God's design. So the health of your body is totally dependent on how effective your nervous system is communicating from the brain to the tissue cells, telling it what to do, bringing life to it, right? You guys with me on that? If you cut all of the nerves going to the heart, what happens to the heart? It dies. When does it die? A month from now? 2 months from now? Immediately. Why? There's no more life getting to it. There's no electrical impulse. Really, it dies because you disconnected man, the spiritual, from man, the physical. I didn't choose the nervous system to be the conduit of life to the tissue cells of the body. That's God's design. It's an amazing design. Right? You guys with me on this? Every time you get adjusted, there becomes a greater expression of your spirit through the tissue cells of your body. You walk out of this front door of this office with your body more vibrantly alive and a greater version of who you were intended to be. I didn't choose the nervous system to do that, but that's what it does. It governs and controls all function, health, and healing. That's not an opinion. It's a scientific fact. No one can deny or reject it. Look at Christopher Reeves. Superman of all people falls off a horse, breaks the first bone in his neck. And as a result, that bone dislodged. And it put pressure on his spinal cord up near the brainstem. What happened to Christopher Reeves? He was a quadriplegic. He couldn't move his arms or legs because the messages from the brain couldn't get from the brain down to those muscles. And void of that life getting to those muscles, what happened to the muscles, the physical matter, and a living, breathing human being? What happened to the muscles? They wasted away. They atrophied. They turned to nothing. Did you guys know that he had to have a machine breathe for him? Did you know he had to have a machine pump the blood through his body? Did you know that he had to have a therapist massage the waste out of his body? because you also disrupted the messages coming from the brain down to those organs in the body. And they don't work either. And what ultimately killed Christopher Reeves? Common cold, an infection that any one of us could heal. It's not an all or none principle. When you start compromising this expression of life that flows across the nerves by God's design, you're affecting the way the body functions and heals. And you just look at the doctor's report, and when I talk about these being progressive degenerative condition, and we talk about when the spine degenerates, and I show you what happens to the nerve roots. And then I tell you about the Windsor autopsies. And what they did was they took cadavers of known cause of death, and they took the diseased organ that killed the person, they followed the nerves back to the spine. And in 95% of the cases, you see the spine degenerating and the nerve roots degenerating. And then we talk about what happens to the spinal cord. It degenerates. And the newest neuroscience, what's happening to the brain, it's degenerating when your spine is becoming weak and degenerated. You're only as healthy as your spine and nervous system, not by my design. That's God's design. And by the way, the mind, not your brain, your mind, who you are as a human being. If you got in a car accident and you damage your head bad enough, you'd be brain dead. And you're no longer who you are. Are you guys with me? You can get brain damaged. Not even brain dead, just brain damaged. Your personality is different. This is all a function of the nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, and all the nerves. It connects mind, body, and spirit all together. That's why we want to glorify this amazing design, the spine and the nervous system. It's the neurospinal organ. There's not one thing you could do to the spine without affecting neurology. Do you guys understand what's happening when you get adjusted? I mean, it's incredible. You start talking about the stressors, literally a reset to the tone. You reset the fight or flight mechanism. The other system that controls everything in the body is the endocrine system. Those are chemical messengers. What I want you guys to know about the toxic loads and exposures that we experience, many of them are potent neurotoxins, and many of them are potent endocrine disruptors. And you have no idea how it's affecting the very systems that control and govern all the things that happen in your body. And the toxicity thing's a very simple thing to address. It's just lateral moves. And we have a toxicity workshop on the 24th. You'd be crazy not to come to it, because the only reason people aren't making the right decisions and cleaning up their internal and external environments because they don't know the difference and they don't have the solutions. We're going to show you, just go to the store, instead of buying this product, buy this one. And it doesn't even cost any more money. The only reason you're not doing it is because no one ever told you. We're going to be here to tell you. And by the way, one common symptom of someone who's chronically exposed to toxins or has toxicity issues is that they have brain fog, they're depressed, and have problems focusing and concentrating. Very anxious, all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk all about this. We'll get into that next time. And then you have to understand too that exercise, you have to do it. You have a genetic requirement for a certain amount of exercise every single day. It's not a good idea, suggestion, or something you should do if you want to be healthy. It's something you must do. When you decide to be lazy and sit on the couch and not exercise, you are making a conscious decision to cause your genes to express in a dysfunctional or diseased position. You're making that decision. Physical inactivity is an abnormal event for a genome program for activity. Move your body. This is what happens. There's a release of hormones. It's a feel-good. It's escape from the stressors of life. There's a reset to the tone. The mechanoreceptors are stimulating the part of the brain that resets the nervous system. So then you help to regulate body chemistry, helps to regulate sleep patterns, improve mood, alters alertness, concentration, overall cognitive function. It's like everything's a reset right here. Exercise your body. The side effect is that you look good, especially if you do it the right way. Learn how to breathe. It's really important, and we don't know how to do it. This is one of the first things I have to teach Olympic athletes when I first see them come on the scene. I remember the first time I went there and I asked if any of the athletes knew how to breathe correctly, and no one did. We're all chest breathers. And we're not designed to breathe out of our chest. We're designed to breathe from our diaphragm. We're supposed to be abdominal breathers. Chest breathing is a learned pattern. Naturally, innately, we're supposed to be stomach breathers. And all you have to do to really witness this is you take a baby and you just watch the baby sleep while they're lying there. And you're going to see their stomach rising and falling, not their chest. And then, so you have to consciously develop new neuroplasticity and create a new habit or pattern. And you have to focus on becoming an abdominal breather. So what you do is you breathe in and you focus on your stomach expanding. And out, and your stomach falls. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Practice it all the time, especially when you're exercising. But especially also when you're stressed out, or when you're sitting in a car and you're all worked up, or you get really mad and angry at someone. Just go back into a nice relaxing breathing state. And again, there'll be a reset because of that. Make sense?
Yes.
Just about done. Pray more, worry less. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, in prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your request be known to God. Just go to God and he'll come back to you. So that's basically it. And just, I want you guys to, this last little thing, you all have gifts and talents. We're all made to be superheroes in different ways, in different shapes, in different forms. Know what those super talents are that God has given you and go back to them and use them. They're there. And you've got the greatest source right there at your fingertips. And when you keep plugging in on a regular basis, I promise you, you're going to find your way. Things are going to be less stressful. Things are going to make more sense. You're going to have more order in your life, less chaos. With less chaos, there's less worry, there's less anxiety, there's less stress, and everything becomes something different. Does that all make sense? All right, good. All right, we're all set there. I appreciate you guys coming out. So make sure you don't have to clap though. But this the toxin workshop is going to be outstanding. So, what's that?
What time?
Probably 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we usually try to do 7 so people can get here.
It's gonna be here.
We also have another community dinner coming up. For those of you that haven't been to it, we do it at Disney's down the road. So you're welcome to come and bring someone with.
So, and we do those dinners, just so you know, it's an opportunity, just if you know of anyone who needs to hear some of these principles and learn that there's a better way that we could be approaching health than the way Americans typically do, or a better way we could be approaching healthcare than the way we do, then we even buy them dinner to come out and hear this message. It's part of our mission. We just want to get out there and let people know that there's a different way we could be approaching our life than the way we do. Something's got to be different, and no one else is telling people this. So that's why we do those dinners. So, and we all know people that are on their knees praying for answers, and all they're getting is more bad information, more drugs, and more surgeries. There's a different way. What else are you going to say, Kim? I'm sorry.
Oh, just with the toxicity workshop, not only like how to make those lateral moves, but there's stuff going in the world that right now that we all need to know, like what they're putting in our animal products. I have some information on that, what they're spraying in our air, and then like we've had some of those chemical spills in Ohio and other places. Extremely important that we know, because it's not just affecting the air, but it's affecting all of us. So we'll bring in some current event type stuff too.
All right, good. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it so much. Just make up misses. Mum's the word. Always think that. Thanks for coming. Hey, if you guys want to come get checked out here, we'll do it for free. We'll do an evaluation for you guys. Yeah.
I'm just visiting for a week.
So if you're, that's fine. You can check out and you can at least see what the state of your spine and nervous system is. I'm not doing it for you to be a patient. I'm doing it for you to gain information and knowledge. And then what part of Texas are you in?
Dallas.
I mean, I know a lot of colleagues there, and if you can't do it while you're here, I could probably get them to honor something similar to that if you want to get checked out. The what?
His friend
Oh,
lives
okay.
down the street.
Oh, cool. Yeah.